Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of this House. We on government think that basically internship is all about doing job. Ladies and gentlemen, if somebody in a company who is officially employed is doing the same jobs, that person will be paid. Internship and students who are desperate to get a job for their future will be under the status quo is consenting to slavery and more creating a condition where there is a race to the bottom where a lot of people has to consent to that slavery, and that is a morally bad thing we want to oppose, and that is why we are taking this proposal. We say what we are doing is basically making all long-term internships being paid, ladies and gentlemen, and this is our model. We say that companies should pay in cases where actual job is taking place. For example, myself, my girlfriend has been engaging for like 400 hours of like advertisement for her intern company. For example, like people who go to Singapore, noted down Japanese students going to Singapore and going into an internship, they create home pages and marketing tools for the Japanese market, forced by their companies. And all these kind of things noted down are unpaid, ladies and gentlemen. We think that if the internship is all about showing around facilities, factories and all that, that is not necessarily a job. We don't really think this policy should apply. Secondly, what we say is that we're not really saying that the companies have to pay a huge amount of money. We think it is moderate, we think it is reasonable. We would say that the payments should be somewhere around the same standard as when officially hired employees would do that job. So if they would be doing some office workers payments times like 0.9 or 8 or something around that would be the standard. Ladies and gentlemen, also we would say that the dominant context of this debate will be large companies, ladies and gentlemen, because large companies are the ones who can abuse their name values in order to collect our students to work for free. Ladies and gentlemen, we say smaller and medium-sized companies have an incentive to actually pay and make sure there are attracted students to come to that internship. We say because they have to compete against the gigantic name values of abusive large companies, and therefore, in order to note it down, attract people, they have that incentive. We think also, we say that on the government's case, the full set of labor laws would apply, so they would be protected under law. Yes, sir.
So given that large company have to hire a lot of people, it's quite unreasonable to assume that a large company doing the long-term internship. Rather, we think the major context is venture or small companies.
We say large companies have the incentive because in order to be competitive, they want to get the best people. And also they are in the condition where they can exercise their abusive power because they want a lot of students. I would have seen a lot of people who would kill their mothers to get an internship in Apple and all these kind of companies. We think that is the context is relevant. First of all, I'm going to talk about the nature of consent and how people just can't consent to certain bad, evil things like slavery. And secondly, I'm going to talk about this race to the bottom and why that is a harmful thing. First, let's move on to this consent. Ladies and gentlemen, as I already mentioned, noting down, people just can't consent to things like slavery as a moral standard we uphold. We think it is because we acknowledge that companies can be abusive and the contract relationship between the employer and employees is imbalanced in the status quo. And that is why we introduce things like labor laws, setting minimum wages, allowing people to form unions, ladies and gentlemen, so that they can fight against the abusive power of companies which are offering jobs to people. We think that the fact that companies can offer a job is very important because job is essential, first of all, for the long-term living. We live in a world where money is necessary to sustain your life. Secondly, we think that there is a cultural value to having a job, ladies and gentlemen. We think that's a fact that a lot of people regard people with jobs as good and responsible civilians. forces some people to opt into getting that job. It makes people desperate to get a job. And we think that companies are abusive in this sense. Ladies and gentlemen, also we mentioned that students are uniquely in the position where they are very vulnerable. For example, in places like the United States and many Western states, a lot of students actually are on a student loan. So they have to have a future prospect of being able to get a lot of money to pay back. We think they're desperate in that sense. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, we think that students, when they go into the company, they're not protected. When they go into internship, they're not protected by labor laws. They don't officially have a channel through the union to speak back against the company when they're being abused. And all these kind of things contribute to being enslaved, and that is just bad. Secondly, let's analyze this issue about the race of the bottom. Ladies and gentlemen, we say that in every contract, both parties should be able to speak up their needs and discuss and then agree, ladies and gentlemen. And because of the power imbalance that I already mentioned, this is not happening in the state as well. So if a student says that, technically, right now, students can say to the company, oh, offer me a job with a payment. But then what the companies would say was that, well, you are a replaceable person, ladies and gentlemen. They would say that there is another person who is willing to work at a lower cost, or maybe even willing to even pay for to work for free, or even to so desperate that they are even willing to pay to get that internship. So you are not, if you don't claim it, if you are going to claim that, I'm going to not hire you as an intern student, ladies and gentlemen. So we think this contributes to students' mindsets, creating the race to the bottom, saying that I must be cheaper labor than compared to anybody else. We think this situation is horrendous because first of all, it means that you're consenting to slavery, and I already mentioned why that is a bad thing. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, even if the consent is genuine, even if people are making a full consent that they are willing to work for this, we think other people who want to work for a payment can't do that because they're not then going to be offered an internship at the company because there will be always other people getting that internship if they do it for free. So ladies and gentlemen, because they create a situation where race to the bottom happens and it moves away options from other people and therefore harm them, we think this motion must stand. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't think this policy is going to be like a huge financial burden on big companies. It's only a few months. We say that also it's not going to be like a real big payment. We think the relevant companies are big and have the capacity to pay. Ladies and gentlemen, we put the priority on weak students. We beg to propose. Thank you very much.
I have three arguments in my speech. My first argument would be explaining the benefit to corporations in short and long term, especially considering venture or small companies. And my second argument would be why unpaid internship is necessary for students. And thirdly, my argument is why unpaid internship can be justified. But before that, let me present a counter model against the government side. So firstly, when a student is going to start to work in an internship or even in an unpaid internship, that person is going to know the work environment and hours, and the company is going to promise them how it's going to be. So there's going to be a consensus between the two people, and if there is going to be changes in the agreement, then they have to both meet and agree. So it's not like the company is going to be more stronger than the student. And also, if there is some sort of violation happening, then we are happy as a government team to allow consultants or create hotline where you can ask for help and ask for consultants outside of the company. So you're going to be able to ask for help. Then going on to my first argument on how it is benefit to the corporation. all the rebuttals are included in my speech. So firstly, benefit to corporations, short and long term. So basically, ventures and especially small companies, well, all companies spend so many times on recruitment, allocating people time and money to look at hundreds of people's documents and interview them. And this is already a major money spent on recruitment. So especially when considering venture companies where they have limits on how much money they can spend on recruitment, we believe that unpaid internship is also a necessary fact for them, especially when they already are spending enough money on recruitment. We believe that this is important, firstly because internship itself is a period of time during which a student or a new graduate is able to experience the environment of the work, right? This means that the company and the student is able to make sure if that person is able to get along in that company, right? So also, we believe that the interview itself, when you are recruiting somebody, is not enough. It's only a few minutes, right? So then, we believe that it's better for the company to able to check, how this person is doing well, how they get well with the people, and how he is able to have confidence in things, and how he matches the environment. And in the status quo, it is good for the ventures and it is the only way because these ventures are limits to how much money they can spend on recruitment. However, in the after plan, small ventures, when we don't have unpaid internships and when all internships are paid, small ventures would have to limit their ways on recruitment, right? So they wouldn't have enough people, or they wouldn't have enough confidence in their recruitment. So even if they recruit the same amount of people, maybe they are going to quit easily, or maybe they are a mismatch of the company, right? We believe that this is actually a bad thing for the company, and the company can, in the worst case scenario, go into bankrupt if they don't have enough people, or if they don't have enough quality of people that they want in the company to keep their company going. And the short term is that it can lead to not enough people or quality. Yes.
So a company is doing really bad economically or financially. Can they choose to pay their employees under the minimum wage?
No. I'll explain that. My partner will explain. In the long term, I'll explain how it is a benefit to long-term corporations. So in the long term, we believe that these ventures and entrepreneurs would not take a risk to make new companies. Or, for example, Rakuten and SoftBank, all big companies that the government has been mentioning, all started as venture companies or small companies, right? These had to take risks and had a limited amount of money and time to spend on recruitment. Therefore, we believe that the entrepreneur's incentive would decrease to make new ventures. And we believe that this is bad for the society's future because we wouldn't have big companies, and big companies, they would only be like big companies that we have right now would be left, and no innovative companies would grow. And this is also bad for the society itself because venture companies do a lot of good things for the society, right? They have new technologies like there's venture companies that makes rocks out of paper. Those new technologies are needed for the society itself. I'll next explain my second argument on why it is necessary to students. So firstly, in the status quo, students, it's even if it's an unpaid internship, it is important for students to have because they have the incentive to work, right? So even in the status quo, there are paid internships, right? However, these students, even though it is unpaid, it is attractive to students because firstly, it can be part of the work history, experience, and skill and benefit, right? So even though the paid internships exist, they still choose to do unpaid internship itself. So even though the government has explained that the unpaid internship is forced choice placed on the students, but we actually believe that it's rather an active choice that the students are making in order to make their thing. Therefore, and I believe that it's a precious experience. So after plan, when unpaid internships are gone, firstly, the ventures wouldn't be able to do internships, right? So there's going to be less internships, and there's going to be less job opportunities or internships for the students. So the students would suffer in the future when they are actually working, because they might be a mismatch between there might be a gap between their understanding and the company itself, and they might suffer in the future, and they might have to quit that job and do another recruitment, right? So we actually believe that that's actually bad for the student. And secondly, so it's also like a waste of time and energy. And my last argument on why unpaid internship is justified. So, we believe that this is same as volunteer works, where there's a mutual benefit that you are doing. So even though it is voluntary work, you want to contribute and gain experience. That's why these people volunteer. So we believe that working does not equal paid. And we believe that it's justified if there's mutual benefit exists between two sides. Therefore, considering why it is how unpaid internships can be justified, and also considering analogy of volunteer, we believe to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition sideline is kind of like Donald Trump. He opposes the existence of minimum wage because it's actually reducing the number of employees for the sake of great America, something like that, right? We are side of Obama, like good America. We want to keep our minimum labor standards, and we want to, as collectively, protect the people, American citizens, Mr. Speaker. Right? So even though the opposition side tried to shift the context into like small company like ventures, but I don't think it really changes the core part of the debate. The core part of the debate is the attractiveness of the company that tries to lure the students who are in the desperate, they're carrying probably multiple student loans and desperate for the job. For the sake of that, like hierarchy and power imbalance exists. Still, there is a situation we have to condemn. That's why we propose. Two things to talk about from Liberty. First of all, I'm going to talk about the job opportunity, internship opportunity, engaging the other side of the house. And secondly, I'd like to talk about the relationship between financial disparity and the existence of unpaid internship. Before that, three rebuttals. First of all, so the opposition came up and mentioned, well, you know, for the venture capitals or small companies, like, they need a method to check the student whether or not they're qualified for the job. First of all, I think they can actually pay some little money for the internship. I think still there's opportunity for them to check out this those students through internship. Second of all, even though they cannot afford those even like small portion money, but we support that they actually have like 10 times more number of interviews. Right? They actually make them multiple tested so that we can check out those elements and so on. Like my company, for example, actually in order to hire American labor in the United States, it takes like 6 months to check out every single element so that we are fully confident even though they haven't done any like job before they get a real job. Second of all, so they mentioned the opportunity for the people with venture capital want to go to venture capital is going to decrease. Maybe that's true, but I don't really think it's significant. Because let's look at the case like, you know, the one venture capital will always hire 2 people as an intern, right? Then after taking the proposal, because of the financial constraint, the number is going to be half, 1. However, the point of the venture capital is that venture capital are really numerous right? That's why, because it's Silicon Valley, it has a million of tech companies are trying to become a giant. So we don't think, as a collective, there is no significant decrease of opportunity as a whole. Lastly, they mentioned, no, they try to draw the parallel between unpaid internship and volunteer work. We think they're totally different stuff. First of all, volunteer work does not involve any power structure, right? The volunteer leader never forced you to work on this, even though you're actually opposing to it. Because also, the volunteer work is not really essential for your life. However, we are describing the current context. For example, in America, the students are carrying multiple debts, and they have to afford their own life. These people are in desperate situation, which is completely different from the volunteer work. No. Moving on to my constructive. No. Okay, so about the opportunity, right? So we're talking about the opportunity, for example, let's say, we were talking about opportunity, for example, when it comes to the financial disparity, right? The unpaid internship itself is really toxic for some individual because it costs a lot of money, for example, for the students to go to, for example, Silicon Valley from their hometown, Kentucky, because Silicon Valley is actually having skyrocketing housing crisis, which is difficult for those long-term students to afford their own rent for several months, and they cannot get any income, and they still have to expend a lot of their own money, right? Then only people who can afford those internships can go to this opportunity. It means that the people are in the lower class income, middle class income, the people cannot then loan anymore and actually already restricted out of this opportunity, Mr. Speaker. So we say we have to expand the opportunity by letting those people afford those internships. That's why we are actually collectively increasing the total scale of the people who can apply for that job. Yes?
Okay, so on your side, you're going to introduce a multiple tests. Of course, it is more burdensome, don't you think? Because in internship, they can grow up the skill, the genuine skill, and they are more likely to be passed any entrance exam in the future, don't you think so?
Oh, I don't really think it is necessary or not. As long as there is a fair way of evaluating someone, so that as they have a certain characteristic, whether or not these people are qualified, I think you don't have to take the best possible option. As long as it is a fair option, I think we have to keep the status. We have to take this proposal. And engaging the question coming from the Daigo, why experience is not enough? I'm going to talk about another substantive argument. Why money and financial compensation is extremely necessary? Because what unpaid internship can offer is that experiences or communication network with a company employee. We think it's really, really subjective. In order to qualify something as repay or reward, it needs to be there needs to be a certain degree of probability that can be monetized or can be translated into the value that everybody recognizes in a fair yardstick. However, there are two problems out there. First of all, even if there's no certainty for the student whether or not they can actually utilize the skill for the near future. In case you think that you actually entered a PR company, but you actually tell that you didn't like the PR company, that skill is actually at zero value, right? Because when you start agriculture, the PR company skill is not necessary. Also, there is no certainty that it can be monetized because some work are just really simple work. For example, taking memos about its own company's internal meeting, which may be valuable in that company, but is not necessarily valuable in the labor market, Mr. Speaker. Also making a homepage for that IT company, right? Making homepage itself, maybe it's fun, but it's not the core part of IT business that the applicants wanted to do. What we have to say is that there needs to be a fair yardstick of evaluation for the work. That is the most objective framework that is actually a financial compensation that needs to be provided in the way that everybody recognizes in any circumstances. That's why we have to propose this motion.
I'm going to talk about three things much. The first one, like clarify the context. Who are the relevant actors in this debate and why that is true. And secondly, I will talk about in the uniqueness of internship. I'd like to clearly distinguish between the ordinary job and internship, because the problem in title proportion case is they are confused with the difference between the job and internship. They completely negligent about like what's the purpose of internship. They seem to believe that internship is somehow the way to earn money. I don't think that is the case. But third, last, I'm going to be talking about why we think that is incredibly damaging for small companies and why we think it's incredibly harmful for as a whole. A couple of rebuttals to the previous speaker. First of all, they say that if in long-term internship is a financial burden for the small company, we can use 10 times interview, whatever. The first bit is incredibly financially burdensome for the small company as well. Secondly, internship is a uniquely effective way to try whether or not that student or that applicant is really matched for the culture or the kind of job content, whatever. Because they give an opportunity for them to work in actual circumstances, that is incredibly important. Secondly, they talked about the generic argument about the poor student. The poor student have less opportunities, therefore we should give this opportunity. We don't think why does unpaid internship is only root cause of the creating gap. There is always in the job hunting, there is those kind of unfair gap, right? If you have money, if you're poor, you're very unlikely to go to, for instance, Tokyo so many times, so that you're like nature of this company that you can, the price very limited, for instance. Or if you have money, then you can ask, for instance, a hired advisor for a consultant for the job getting, so that you can get a higher advantage. These already exist in the status quo. Yes, we are absolutely happy to minimize the gap. Why internship is the only source, and why is it incredibly hard? We think internship is very limited circumstances. I don't think that is a huge issue and relevant in this debate. So who are the relevant actors? So the first speaker and the second speaker also talked about the big companies, the main target in this debate. We don't think so, right? Because look at the reality. In Japan, for instance, almost all the companies during the short-term internship, look at, for instance, Mitsubishi, they just doing the 5 days of the internship. And any other, the reason being because they have to hire more than 100 people at 1 year. In that circumstance, it's not reasonable for them to hire quite a low number of people in long term. Like if those companies want to hire like a student hire like some labor forces, they can hire other specialists, not the student. Right? That's why, for instance, the big company hired consultant. Even though they have to pay a lot of money, they have no incentive for the big companies to hire students as a labor force from the very get-go. But even if there is that if we can assume, right, that there is no incentive for a big company to actively exploit those students from the very get-go, right? Because risk overrides the benefit, right? Even if they can hire the very low wage of the image, once the information spread that those companies exploiting students, no thanks, the circumstances, their brand image is incredibly damaging. You know what? The big company really care about the images, the brand image, right? That's why there are many companies currently they're starting to write from the Hatarakikata to change, they are not the black company at all. Therefore, we say that the company have a huge incentive not to exploit students from the back. Therefore, we think their assumption totally false. We say, therefore, we think relevant targeting space is rather small companies that they cannot afford to pay the long-term internship from the very beginning, right? So therefore, we think that all the benefits they talked about is simply irrelevant. Secondly, about what's the purpose of internship, what's the difference between ordinary job? Yes, we totally agree that in the case of job, in the case of ordinary job, the hiring, it's necessary to guarantee the minimum standard, because there are the power structures there. Because we see the kind of power structure between ordinary job and internship is totally different. The reason why the government has to make sure that the power to save the workers from the exploitation of the company is because company have a huge bargaining chip. Because the workers is entirely relying on their life on the company. The only revenue for sustaining their life is from the company, right? So that's why if you are fired from the company, you cannot sustain your life. You cannot send your children to go to school. That is incredibly damaging. But in the case of internship is not for sustaining their life. It's even if there is a certain kind of power bargaining chip. Yes, go ahead.
So internships are for the future job, which would lead to future sustainability of life. Isn't that same logic exist?
That's what I actually try to say. So the ultimate purpose of internship is just part of the recruiting, right? The recruiting job hunting. The company try to scrutinize whether that student or that applicant is really matches to your company. It's not giving money or it's not giving to force them to work job, right? That reason is yes, even if there is a few opportunity for future job, but the degree of independence is totally different, right? Because even if you are not hired by that company, it doesn't mean that automatically your job, your current work life is completely completely destroyed, right? Because in that point of time, those students do not really rely on economically on that company. Even if you are not past that intro, you can find another job, you can find another company, right? So therefore, we think emergency and also dependency of the company is incredibly different, and totally different, right? If students want to earn money, then you can go to find the part-time job or any other job. That's we think purpose and also the degree of power imbalance is completely different. Therefore, we think the assumption is totally untrue, right? Therefore, we think that given the purpose of internship and the power imbalance, solar power structure, we see that there's no necessity for the government to make sure the safety standard on the circumstances. Rather, we think we want allow small companies to do that, give expanded opportunity for students to find the most matching company for them. Lastly, about small companies, which is not completely responded to. We say because in the status, small companies really rely on the long-term internship for the finding the new workers who really contribute to that company. They require those small companies from finding the good workers for the company. We think that is incredible because we cannot seeing the more and more the small and innovative companies, right? For instance, looking at for instance companies like SMS, which are creating a medical platform that allow more and more patients to get information and matches for the good doctors, right? These kind of innovative services can less likely to happen under their side account because those companies cannot find the human resources that those kind of innovation to take place. So what have we told you on the side opposite? First, we have told you that the relevant context is small company, therefore their context is simply relevant. We told you that small company is necessary to do those kind of internship, and also it allows students to have more opportunity. For those reasons, we oppose.
Thank you everyone. Given the conflict between the characterization of the company like middle, small or large companies, the answer is quite simple. One, we have given to you the common principle which can be applied to the both characterization, like exploitation under the name of unpaid internship is morally unacceptable regardless of the capacity of the company. Moreover, two, my partner have sufficiently rebutted about the case of small or middle class company, but the Yokoyama never refuted to the case of large companies. They just say it's not proper characterization without stating if that is the case, what will happen under outside house. That's crucial damage for the case. Given this, I will tell you two issues why we outside win. One, why slavery under the name of unpaid internship is unacceptable and unjustifiable. This principle is quite important because we are not talking about whether student happiness can be acquired or whether company can earn profit or not. If the measure to make profit, measure to make happiness is unacceptable, we have to oppose this kind of measure instead. Two, in which paradigm student it's better for the company or student, and here I will summarize the characterization of the companies. Refutations are included in my speech. So first about the principle. There are three contentions from negative bench. One, it's same as volunteer. There are two refutations. One,
there are literally no explanation why volunteer itself is good, or what similarity, or what that common part, why that common part within volunteer and unpaid internship is important. We are not opposing volunteer, but if they want to use the analogy of the volunteer, they have to support logically the why volunteer and unpaid internship is similarly good. Two, actually different. In the case of NGO or NPO, they are paying the sufficient amount of salary to the employee, or in the case of just helping neighborhoods, like having elderly people having heavy burdens, it never produce anything to society. Moreover, there is no power imbalance between the elderly people, neighborhood, and you. That's quite different, because in the case of unpaid internship, company produce and get benefit by the production with the cooperation by the people in unpaid internship. Then because those companies get profit by the cooperation with the students in unpaid internship, they should pay rewards. That's quite a different case. Second reason coming from negative bench is students have consented to working condition, like they explain the model like hotline or whatever, so forth. One, we don't think that they sufficiently prove why those students can sufficiently utilize the hotline or this kind of working in the consent in the first place, because the argument we have given is quite simple. In order for those students to utilize this kind of system sufficiently, they need legal protection, like labor union or whatever, so forth. Because without those students knowing that this kind of legal framework is sufficiently workable, they don't know how to use it. They won't have incentive to utilize these kind of issues. But even if this was true, this wasn't sufficiently refuting our cases. I will explain the detail later. Then third reason, later please, is those students are not financially relying on those unpaid internships. This sounds good, but this never damage our principle or other things, because just because those students are not relying on those unpaid internships financially cannot be the reason to exploit those students. Even if I have billions or trillions of dollars, that cannot mean that the company can exploit me without paying money. Or even if I have double work, and in the A office I will be paid sufficiently, but it cannot be the reason that those office B won't pay me the money just because I'm not financially relying on. Because what we have given to it that simple. When someone contributes to those companies to make profit, then here's the obligation of the company to reward those people for the effort that's made and within the relationship with the company and the individual. And what we have told you, one, the consent is extremely systematically harmful for the students to sufficiently make, and moreover, two, even if some individual partially make full consent, that cannot be the reason to generalize to the entire characteristics of the student. Because if one student consented to not to pay, then by the time that race to bottom happens and literally no refutation from their side of the house, we think every student should be granted the equal opportunity to be rewarded, and free from the fear or exploitation of the company. Meaning our principle clearly stand in this way, then we have justified that they fail to justify that why does the company have the right to make profit by exploiting those students. Okay.
How can you be sure that students who are not even employed produce jobs that gain profit?
That's unfair interest we are talking about. Because if those students are not producing, maybe we think that just short-term unpaid internship, like for 3 days, maybe employee will explain about the company's working environment. Then those students might experience like demonstration of the working condition. But if they work for those companies for like several months, we think those works are actually producing something for those companies which can be beneficial for those companies, like even distributing like advertisement or pamphlets for those every single houses, and actually benefiting for those companies because they can save the cost of advertisement fee, or even if they're just like serving the teas, it's actually producing for those companies. Then secondly, after practical consequences of this plan, well, let me summarize the character of those companies which do unpaid internship. They raised two reasons why large companies don't do unpaid internship. One, large companies have to hire much more people in a year, so they don't have capacity to do unpaid internship. We think there's a huge logic jump. Because those large companies will hire much more people, then they have much more necessity to see much more number of people in the internship. Then we think those companies have much more incentive to conduct unpaid internship, because in order to see various kinds of people, they want to save the cost for internship. Over two, they say daycare reputation is factually wrong, because they are already prioritizing the short-term direct benefit by saving cost rather than being damaged by the reputation, like Nike exploit medical people in the factories, or Apple, we see those companies, they don't have less incentive to care reputation rather than direct benefit. But the fact that many people are going denser again shows the reputation, damage of reputation is not so significant for those companies. Then, conclusion is here, those large companies have capacity to pay for those unpaid internships, they should do so. Or secondly, even if the small company or middle class company is the case, the same logic applies here. They should pay to those companies. Like even if they don't have capacity or they have to decrease the number of internships, we don't think it is damageable for the students, because even if the scale of one internship in the venture company decreases, there are a bunch of venture companies, like thousands of venture companies, and those students can still choose various kinds of venture internships. Even if one venture company just accepts 3 students, then they can choose for various kinds of venture internships. Then the exclusivity is here. Outside can uniquely open the gate and accessibility for, especially for the poor students who are not affordable to go to unpaid internship, because exclusively outside the house, we can increase the number of paid internships. Then for all of these reasons, I'm happy to propose.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Simply, I have to confess, I don't have money, right? I have to raise up my family, you know. But one thing I wanted to do at the last year is I wanted to work at the IT industry, right? Without any experiences or programming skill or whatever. But the problem is here, I don't have money to buy a new PC. A lot of IT industry people have MacBook Pro, you know, but I don't have money to do that. I don't have any access to learning programming skill, or I go to school. But I successfully got the job of IT industry by accessing the unpaid internship of the IT industry, by providing special experiences even for the students who have no access to buy MacBook Pro, or who have no experiences or background of the programming industry, because they can provide such kind of special experiences because they don't have pay financial burden. Ladies and gentlemen, what's going to happen in their side of house? Let's be comparative here. Those people who can access to internship is the only people who can access to MacBook Pro, ladies and gentlemen. Or not only MacBook Pro, but also people who have capacity, financial capacity or educational capability to be able to access such a luxurious, you know, this textbook or opportunity that they have to take care of. That means that rich people, middle class people are the only target that they are likely to be passed in their side of the internship. That's terrible. I'm going to talk about 3 things in my speech. First of all, the contextualization of this debate. What company are likely to introduce unpaid internship? Second of all, I'm going to explain the problem. Their side of the problem is mitigable or not. And even if that's not mitigable, what extent of the seriousness that they have? Thirdly, even if it is so serious, what kind of principle justification to introduce unpaid internship? First of all, context. Yes, they say Apple, some kind of big industries still introduce unpaid internship. But in general, big corporation is less likely to introduce unpaid internship in the first place. Because first of all, they have the financial capacity, you know, to introduce the paid internship in even long term. And they characterize themselves, they created very competitive context for their side. They say, oh, these kind of industry are so competitive. That's why they have to introduce unpaid internship. If the industry is so competitive, those big corporations, of course, motivation to introduce paid internship, right? Because simply compare for students which side of the internship they want to take, paid internship, unpaid internship with the same skill, with the same industry. Of course, students is going to take the paid internship, right? That's a big corporation is likely to introduce paid internship rather than unpaid. That's why the main context of this debate, the venture company, small company, the company who just start up, ladies and gentlemen. That's why like the second speaker explained, those corporations has less likely to get the name value. That's why there is no credit to be able to lend the money from the bank. There is no connection with the venture capital. That's the main context of the company, must be the small company. Moving on to the problem, not yet. So, first of all, the entire problem of this side of the house is mitigable. Why is that? Because by restriction of our model, clearly explained by Prime Minister Kato. So, for example, like they say the character is very well, per people, blah, blah, blah. But of course, regular working restriction exists. That's why those poor people are able to take advantage of working and coexisting or putting a shift of part-time job, ladies and gentlemen. That's why those people can rather access. Rather, when it comes to solve the poor people, their side of the house is very counterproductive. Please look at the remark of the Tyson. They want to introduce 10 times or 20 times all the multiple tests. What's going to happen? Those irregular examination processes is rather counterproductive for poor people because they cannot put the regular shift for, to be able to get the money, or they have to pay so much expensive transportation fee every time, right? I actually pay from Tokyo to Osaka by taking advantage of night bus. I pay more than 20 man in the job hunting processes. That's stupid. And even if, sorry, let's forget. Even if that's so, still problem left. Still those poor people have choice to enter the paid internship, ladies and gentlemen. Like I explained, in the same industry, there are so many corporation has active incentive motivation to introduce the paid internship, non-paid internship, right? That's why we think, for those poor people, why don't you try to make effort to access to the paid internship, ladies and gentlemen? Why those poor people have to access to unpaid internship, ladies and gentlemen? Even if those poor people have some kind of ambition or desire to want to go to the specific corporation which introduces unpaid industry, corporation, still no problem. Because those poor people can firstly go to the paid internship corporation within the same skill and the same industry. And after that, in terms of the examination process, entrance examination processes, at the moment they can show the skill, they can finally go to the company, whatever they want, right? What's the problem behind that? Okay.
So as well as the competition among companies, also the competition between students for internship is this. Then if the number of paid internship is smaller, don't you think there are students who have to go to unpaid internship because there is no room for the paid internship?
I don't get it because I clearly contextualize those big company or middle class company has financial capability to invest to introduce the paid internship, right? There's no such a thing I'm not going to take it. Moving on to the last point. Even the problem is serious, what's the principal justification? Because there is an active consensus, right, for those target of the victims that they're talking about. Those people are actively informed there is no salary on that internship and they still want to get the skill in that corporation, in that company, right? That's why they are active risk taker hoping to get a potential benefit in the future, such as skill, such as internship record in the specific company. That's why they have active consensus and made a choice to do so. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the first place, let me summarize. So, their side of the entire problem is totally mitigable, and for those people, they're going to deploy such a precious opportunity for corporation who can provide the best matching services between students and the corporation. And rather for small and startup company, they have no capacity, no financial capacity to recruit. That's why for those corporations is very good. And also for the students, like me, I don't have any experiences in money. For those students, will be so, why don't you take outside?
going to talk about two things. The firstly, whether it is legitimate for companies to do unpaid internship in long term. Secondly, we'll talk about pragmatic aspect. There are 2 points from terms of students and small companies, or companies in general. First, the claim from the proposition is illegitimate to exploit students by unpaid internship for 2 reasons. One, because the students make profit of companies, therefore they have to be rewarded by money. Secondly, because the students are obsessed with the idea that they want to be hired by the company, therefore that choice is illegitimate. First of all, they have no reason from the side proposition that why that reward has to be the form of money. No explanation from their side accounts. We say that the students themselves consented to what kind of reform the reward they want. That's what we think is exactly the same as the volunteer work. We have told you that the volunteer work is because the participant want to get the kind of sense of contribution. Exactly the same way, because students want to get experiences, the opportunity to be hired, these kind of things. This is exactly that's what we told you, the student, the reward not necessarily have to be the form of money. Rather, we think it's up to the student. Second, about consent validity. They say because of the reason why they are irrational, because they want to obsessed with the idea they have to be hired by the company. We have told you first of all that the students have multiple choices to be hired by other company. They have also the way to get information in the circumstances. They have no reason to be provided by the side proposition why students are such stupid and like irrational decision. We have told you that there is a mechanism to make sure that they can make informed decision. Even if students are not hired, we think that's a legitimate choice because the student what consented to is not the getting job. It's getting the job is rather the opportunity to be hired, right? Because in the terms of long-term internship, the company still seriously think about whether or not that student should be hired, right? That's what we think that the opportunity is already gained, and as a reward for the student, we think that's what this choice is valid. No reason from the side of house why that's embarrassed. Second, pragmatic aspect. The first, in terms of student, they have just talked about the poor student suffer in the stats because of the long-term, the unpaid internship. The first premise on their side of the house is that after taking this policy, that those small companies continue to use the long-term internship by paying money. We have told you from the very beginning of this debate that those companies are uniquely actors who cannot afford to do that. That's why they're doing unpaid internship. They have no response from their side of how the small company continue to give that opportunity to students. The relevant comparative of this is in under hours, still even if it's unpaid, the students have an opportunity to be hired by the company. On their side of house, those small companies stop unpaid internship. Therefore, we think the students are very lose the opportunity. Also, that the mismatch are very likely to happen under their work. This is the relevant comparative. No mechanism from their side of the house, right? So, lastly about companies, in terms of companies' benefit, they have no response from their side of the house. They just talked about student. We have, from the very beginning, we have told you that it's incredibly important for small company, and we have told you that small company or startups is really important for giving innovation and changes to give meaningful services to society. We have told you that because getting the human resources is important, and internship is specifically long-term internship is a necessary step for the company to make sure that the people that those companies hire can continue to contribute to the company in long term, right? Because if students do not really feel that company matches to you and then stop working in the very soon after hire, this is incredibly damaging for small companies. That's why the long-term internship is necessary mechanism for the company, the small company, to make sure whether to judge whether or not that student can contribute to this company in the long term and to sustain their business model and give meaningful services to society. For those reasons, we beg your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the end of this very awesome debate, we would say that Daigo was good because he got a MacBook Pro for free. The thing is, because of that, There are people like Maiko-chan who is forced to be enslaved by a big IT company, ladies and gentlemen. We have analyzed how there was a race to the bottom happening in the state as well, and regardless of how much you inform or how much you make sure that consent is there, you just can't do it because we think that it reduces other people's opportunities to get paid, which we think is fundamentally important. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk about two things in order to clear up this debate. First of all, I'm going to talk about whether or not opposition has given us a principle, a reason of why we can allow slavery in this certain situation. And secondly, I'm going to examine whether the opposition's harms were good enough to overcome the principles that we have proposed on this debate. So let's look at the first thing. Because we heard from them that, well, the only reason why students can be enslaved in this situation was because students aren't really economically dependent on the internship. Ladies and gentlemen, we say that dependency is not a criteria in the same way as people with a huge asset can't be unpaid when they choose to be employed by another company. We think we didn't hear any response to that. Also, we have analyzed that these students are dependent because they are risking their future, ladies and gentlemen. We have told you in the specific context of, for example, in the United States, people are on loans, meaning that they are desperate to get future opportunities. And they didn't really say why future dependency for the future is not a dependency, ladies and gentlemen, and that was a failure on their side of the house. Also, well, they claim that these people are rewarded already because they get experiences in a certain company and that is good enough reward for these people. We say no, because we clearly told you from Take of how it is that we need an objective measurement of the reward. We say that experience and human network that you have may be, may or may not be important for the future monetization, ladies and gentlemen. This wasn't responded to. Also, we say that people working under the minimum wage, ladies and gentlemen, they also get a human networks, they also get experience, but we don't allow to do so because it always creates the race to the bottom and the government steps in to stop that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, also we heard that this is the same as volunteers, but we already told you why this is completely different from the volunteers by analyzing the incentives of people in internships and in voluntary activities. Secondly, let's examine the harms. First of all, what we heard was that there's going to be less opportunity for students to go to internships in venture companies, ladies and gentlemen. We say, first of all, the number of ventures is so large, ladies and gentlemen, we think there is going to be an opportunity for them to do so. This wasn't responded by them. Also, ladies and gentlemen, they didn't really respond to Take's analysis of how it is that our policy opens up more opportunities for poor people, and therefore we think the amount of opportunities for students are probably going to be the same. Secondly, what they have told us that ventures will be bankrupt, ladies and gentlemen. We say, why is that a priority? They didn't really explain that. We say that, like we already pointed out, that just because you're in a bad financial state, it doesn't mean that you can pay people below the minimum wage, ladies and gentlemen. And this was an important concept that they missed so far. We tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it was also unreasonable for them to simply limit this debate to ventures. But even though we accept that this is about ventures, we think that it is important to acknowledge that our principle that you just can't be part of the creation of the race to the bottom that stands in this debate. We think that, regardless of the size of the company, you're losing other people's opportunities, and that is very important. Daigo told us that students will love to be paid for their internships, but we analyze that is too general. We have given you the specific context in which companies can abuse these children, these students, and the students' mindset in order to make sure that they are bringing the lowest cost. Ladies and gentlemen, for all these reasons, we think we can state. Thank you very much.